On your mark, get set, go. We do problems number 2 and 4 today in our notes. Welcome. You can even sit there if you want. Totally up to you. We are graphing parabolas. What are the easiest characteristics of the parabolas to point out? Awesome. The direction and the y-intercept. What is the direction? Why is it up? There's 2 of them. Yep, a is the value in front of x squared. If a is positive, it's up. If a is negative, it's down. We see that there is a positive 1 in front of the x squared. What is the y-intercept? It's always the value that sits, or that's the constant at the end, so -1. All right, now the vertex is usually the more challenging part for people to come up with. Do you remember the formula we used to come up with the vertex? -b divided by 2a. So, yep, if I make b negative, so this is a, this is b, and this is c. So if I make b negative, that's positive 1. And then divided by twice the a value, so 2. And I get 1/2. Now at this point, I'm not very good at dealing with fractions. I know you guys are a lot better at that. So I go to my calculator is generally what I do. And wherever I see an x, I put in a parenthesis. 1 divided by 2, and I square that. Minus parenthesis 1 divided by 2, and then -1. So without a doubt, the biggest mistake that people make is plugging those in. Your calculators are not very user-friendly. You could probably download a better calculator that takes into account order of operations. But this calculator right here, if you were to use something like that, that does take into account order of operations, and it will do it the exact same that my calculator up here is doing. Okay, so if you ever want to grab one of those, you can. I press enter. If you want to convert that to a fraction, I don't know if you noticed, but your calculator is a great option. If you press math, it says convert to fraction, it converts it to -5/4. So I'll just write -1.25. The axis of symmetry. It's not a number, it's an equation. X equals, and it's the x value of your vertex. So x equals 1/2. So I'm going to start making a graph now. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So I have 1/2 and -1.25. So 1/2 and -1.25. We'll put that right there. The axis of symmetry goes up like that, divides it in half. And I have my vertex. And the y-intercept is at -1. So I have a point here. If I reflect it over, I'd have a point right over there. Does this look like it's going to cross the x-axis? Yeah. How many times? Twice. So we could go ahead and find the x-intercepts by factoring, but does that factor? It doesn't factor. So I'm going to take x squared minus x minus 1, and I'm going to use the quadratic formula to find the x-intercepts. So on Friday, or on Wednesday, excuse me, these all factored. But today, the 2 that we're going to do not factor. You have to use the quadratic formula. So we have -b, which is positive 1, plus or minus the square root of, what is b squared? 1, minus 4 times the a value is 1, times the c value is -1. How many negative signs do I have? So they will cancel each other out, make a positive. So I have 1 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. That's what we call simplest radical form. 1 plus or minus the root of 5 over 2. Now, pretty tough to plot 1 plus or minus square root of 5 over 2, isn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it into my calculator, and I'll put parentheses in the top, 1 plus the root of 5. I'm going to divide that by 2. 1.62. You told me it crossed the axis twice. That's one of the values. The other value, I do 1 minus the square root of 5, and I divide it by 2. Negative 0.62. I'm going to check to see if that fits with my graph. If I go over 1.62, it's a little bit more than 1.5, and negative 0.62 over there. Notice how it fits my parabola quite nicely. Any questions? Josh, what do you think is the most challenging part to do here?
Personally, it's just having to find numbers and the left foot and
Got it. Dealing with numbers and weird things, I agree. Let's try to make it easier the second time. Sophie. These two guys? Okay. So vertex, but the -1 is the y-intercept. So that's where it crosses the y-axis at -1.
I don't know how to plot this.
This guy?
I thought you plot the middle one.
So I plotted the middle one.
Where is that?
That's my vertex. So my vertex was 1/2 and -1.25. So it went over half and down 1.25.
And then you do
Then I did the y-intercept, which was across the y-axis at -1. And I flipped it over the axis to get the other point.
like guess where it goes.
Yeah, half a unit, you know.
Okay.
And then I know that those two from this spot right here.
So you did the second one, the -162 divided by 2.
I did 1 minus the root of 5 over 2. So the top one is 1 plus the root of 5 over 2. Bottom was 1 minus. Better? All right, let's try the last one together. What makes this more difficult than the others? I raise negative x squared minus 3x plus 3. So this is not written in what we call standard form, so we switch it around. Let's do the two easy parts. What's the direction? Very good. It is down. As we see, the x squared is negative. What's the y-intercept? Y-intercept is 3. The equation for the vertex is negative b divided by 2a. What is negative b? Divided by twice the a value of -2. 3 divided by -2 is -1.5. I'm not very good at plugging in decimals and fractions in, so I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator. I have a negative parentheses, -1.5 squared. So that's my, notice my x squared has a negative sign in front of it. And then instead of x, I have a -1.5, and I have that squared. Minus parentheses, minus 3 times parentheses, -1.5. And then I have a plus 3. When I do that, I get 5.25. Axis of symmetry. X equals -1.5. If you just write -1.5, I will take a half a point off on your test. You must write x equals. It's an equation for a line. It's not a number. There's a difference. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to make an 8x8 graph. Actually, we'll go 6x6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had chicken nuggets, macaroni and cheese last night. Nope, we didn't do dino ones last night. But I do prefer the dino ones. Much more fun. I'm going to plot my vertex, negative 1.5, so back 1.5, and up 5.25. And again, the axis of symmetry is an imaginary line, divides it in half. What other point could I plot right now? 3. What could I do at that point? Reflect it over. It's 1.5 units from the y-axis, so I just go 1.5 units the other way. There you got that point. All right, all we have left is the x-intercepts. Does that factor? Nope, so we have to use the quadratic formula. What is negative b? Positive 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 minus 4 times negative 1 times positive 3. All divided by 2a, so it's a negative 2 in the denominator. How many negative signs do you see underneath square root? So I get 9 plus 12 is 21. Can you reduce the square root of 21?
Yep.
Very good, you cannot. So we're just going to leave that as 3 plus or minus the root of 21 over negative 2. But I cannot reduce it, but I also can't really plot that. I'm going to have to come up with some decimals. So I'm going to use my handy-dandy calculator. I've got 3 plus the square root of 21. I divide that by negative 2. And I get negative 3.79. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Parentheses 3 minus the square root of 21. And I'll divide that by negative 2. And I get 0.79. So if we look at our graph, we notice 0.79 is going to bring us close to 1, and negative 3.79 is going to bring us close to negative 4. And those fit really nicely with the rest of my graph. And I have a very nicely shaped parabola. That'll give us a 4 out of 4 on the test for that problem. What do you think, Maya? If I gave you one problem regarding a parabola right now and said try it, and I scored it out of 10, how many points out of 10 do you think you get? Josh said he get a 2. How many points do you think you get? 10. She says 10. All right. Time to finish up the rest of your homework. You have those problems to try. Answer key is posted.